I'm going to take you through my top 20 records of the year. This is the second part of my top 50 list. If you want to see numbers 50 through to 21, please see my previous video. I'll link that in the description. Before we kick off, I just want to say it's been a fantastic year for new music. I've discovered countless gems. I've listened to hundreds of albums, and I could have made this a top 100 easily. It was really hard to pare down this list. Even as late as November and December, there were some great releases coming out, and I had to keep changing up this list. But I've made it now, and I'm sure there'll be things I've missed and that will crop up later, but this is it. This is the top 20 of my top 50 records of the year. Let's go. So at number 20 we have the latest Actress album. Actress is a electronic producer from the UK. I think he's come through with my favourite record of his yet. When I first listened to this, it didn't really grab me, but there was enough there that I enjoyed to make me want to go back and hear it again. And I'm glad I did, because I enjoyed it more and more as I listened to it. And this one's been on regular rotation throughout the whole year. The thing about this album is it doesn't do anything majorly striking or original for the techno genre, but what it does do, it does really well. This thing's full of banging 4/4 beats, amazing synth sounds, great production. The album has this dreamy sci-fi quality to it, which I really adore. It's got a ton of atmosphere. It makes me think like I'm in a sci-fi film like Blade Runner or Star Trek. The first half of the album is relatively straightforward. Plenty of 4/4 beats, repeated melodies that sort of grow and hypnotize you. But the second half of this album is a lot more challenging, more soundscapes, more diversity, atmosphere and dreaminess, taking that dreaminess even further. Overall, it's just an incredibly well-rounded album, and it got addictive. I just kept coming back to this thing and always enjoying it. Primitive Man are back, and boy, this is something. Sometimes people ask me, what is the heaviest album you've ever heard? And in 2017, my answer is this thing, Caustic by Primitive Man. Wow, this is heavy. This is extreme. Like, so much fuzz, so much noise, colossal down-tuned guitars. This thing is 77 minutes long, and it flows almost like one giant thing. I really think you should experience this album from start to finish in one sitting. It will really overwhelm you. It's almost hard to get through by the end, but you've got to admire their consistency. This thing is vile, absolutely disgusting, horrible. Every track, it feels like they're just beating you down relentlessly, pounding you into dust. I genuinely think that going forwards, really extreme producers and metal bands are going to listen to this album and they're going to want to recreate some of these sounds. I think this has set a new bar for just how extreme, how disgusting, how horrible and nihilistic heavy metal music can be. And other metal bands, they're going to have to up their game if they want to compete with this baby. Primitive Man's Caustic is a landmark in extreme metal. Gas is the alias of Wolfgang Voigt, founder of the Compact electronic music label. And this is the first Gas album in about 17 years now. It's a thematic sequel to the album Pop. As the narco pop implies, this one is much darker, much seedier. If Pop was a daytime album, this is a nighttime album for sure. I don't think that Gas has done anything to reinvent the rule book. He's just carried on from where he left off, but he's making fantastic and striking ambient and almost techno-influenced ambient music. And it's good to see that he's just come back and made another great record. One of my ambient highlights of the year for sure. Narco Pop is a very dramatic, moody, downbeat album, very melancholic as well. It really made me think of like Lars von Trier films or Scandinavian noir murder mysteries, that sort of vibe. Very dark. All the album art is images from inside a forest at night, and that's the perfect feeling that this album evokes. It really transports me into this lonely forest where I picture animals scurrying about in the dark, owls cooing. It's a very dramatic, moody, melancholic record, and yeah, I think he's come through with another really strong release. Definitely, if you're into sinister, serious, haunting ambient music, this is one that you definitely got to check out. Will require some patience though. This is a long and drawn out record. It's not going to be for everyone, but I really dug this thing. Good to have Gas back. And we have the new Ariel Pink record, a tribute to Bobby Jameson. Ariel Pink's one of the most striking and eccentric pop musicians going. He really just has this unique sound. This is true of a lot of his albums, but it sounds like this album could have genuinely come out of the mid-80s, like it's some lost gem. Not only does Ariel Pink have amazing attention to detail when it comes to recording and production, has this really genuine vintage quality, but he composes fantastically eccentric and colourful compositions. He's got some great hooks all over this album. Some amazing, really bright, wonderful and kooky guitar, synth and percussion sounds. And like any great pop record, these tunes are going to get stuck in your head. They're going to infect your brain. So yeah, I'm not a big pop music fan, but Ariel Pink's take on pop music is something really out there. Definitely an artist you should check out if you haven't heard him already. Death Grips are back with Steroids, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Gabba Megamix. Wow, that's a mouthful. This thing may only be an EP, but it's so chaotic, so violent, so dense that I generally couldn't take any more of it. It's the perfect length. This thing made my head spin, but once again, Death Grips, they come through with strange, forward-thinking, absolutely mad, bonkers, off-the-wall sounds. In particular, this is one of the most seedy and violent releases perhaps in their entire discography. This thing will make your head spin. It's fast, it's incoherent, it's messy, but goddamn, this thing got me pumped up. Absolutely strange, maddening, animalistic, visceral. Even hardened Death Grips fans will be taken back by this release. There's just no stopping this band. There's just no stopping them. Following after Death Grips, we have a complete 180 in tone. It's the new Mount Eerie album, A Crow Looked at Me. A bit of backstory. Mount Eerie is the recording alias of Phil Elverum, a solo folk musician. Recently, his wife sadly passed away. A Crow Looked at Me is really his way of dealing with that grief, putting all of his thoughts, his emotions and feelings into words. It's a very raw album. It's a very moving album. It's the kind of thing you listen to and you'll have a lump in your throat. Opens with this track called Real Death, and that really sets the tone. It's a very direct and honest album. Kind of reminds me of Mark Kozelik's work with Sun Kill Moon, just how directly and personally his lyrics come across. This will easily be one of the most moving and haunting and stirring albums of the year. I think it's a tremendous achievement. It's kind of one of those albums you wish didn't have to exist, but I'm hoping that it was really therapeutic for Phil Elverum to make this album. It's a tremendous achievement. Always a very difficult and challenging record, but one that is so life-affirming. Rather than being depressing and languid, it's actually really uplifting, as well as is a tough listen as well. So yeah, one of the most unique listening experiences of 2017. Carrying on a similar theme of death and loss is the new Bell Witch album, Mirror Reaper. Bell Witch are a Seattle-based funeral doom metal duo, and before the making of this album, their drummer and vocalist Adrian Guerra sadly passed away. Mirror Reaper is a 83-minute long piece of music that tributes their fallen drummer, taking the concept of funeral doom metal and making it literally like a funeral. The album's concept and lyrics deals with themes of passing through to the afterlife, and even Adrian's unused vocal takes make it onto this album. This album goes to show that even when you're dealing with the most extreme, heavy and ugly styles of music, there can still be so much emotion, rawness and human feeling in the music. Sure, there are some absolutely crushing riffs on this album, but I feel like the overall experience, something meditative, haunting, and quite uplifting in a way. It deals with death very gracefully, something that can be made quite corny by some extreme metal bands. But this is a work of art, literally a work of art if you're holding the gorgeous album sleeve in your hands. This is a very patience-testing album. It's one single 83-minute track. Unless you get it on CD, it's broken into 2 discs, or vinyl has a few side breaks. There are some tremendous melodies throughout this album. In the second half of this beast, it almost moves into territories of post-rock and ambient music. It's all built from these very slow-moving arpeggios and a really stunning use of clean, ghostly, ethereal vocals on this thing. It's a huge, mammoth album, but I think it really rewards your patience. Another really striking and personal album, and the concept is fantastic. It generally feels like an epitaph to someone who has passed away. It's been a very strong year for hip-hop, and one of my favourites is Who Told You to Think by Milo. This is his 3rd record, but the first one I've heard from him. I've since went and checked out his other albums that are great as well. Milo's just bringing something really fresh to the table. I see this as proper geek rap. He's got sort of an awkward, but in a way really cool flow. His lyrics are really out there, quite abstract. There's some really off-kilter choices of beats and samples. Definitely has a strong sort of Stones Throw, Madlib vibe going on. But he has enough of his own personality in there as well. I think he's a really interesting MC. A little bit of a low-key album. It's not super flashy or anything, but it's full of personality and one of the best alternative hip-hop records of the year. I don't know how I missed out on this band, but Big Brave are one of my favourite discoveries of this year. This is a stunning sort of drone rock records, verging onto like drone metal, doom metal, but with also elements of post-rock. They have Jessica Moss playing strings on this thing. Just 3 lengthy tracks here. The way this band uses discord and repetitive riffs is just really striking. All of these massive songs are really dirging and sprawling, but they really blossom as well into these noisy climaxes, and they are full of these strange, dreamy vocals from guitarist and vocalist Robin Watty that just burst into life with so much passion and emotion and all out just strangeness. Big Brave left a huge impression on me this year. Almost reminds me a little bit of the eeriness of Slint's Spiderland record. It has a creepy, doomy vibe, but also a really soaring and passionate side as well. It's always exciting when Godspeed You Black Emperor come out with a new record. In my eyes, this band can do no wrong, but they've received some criticism. People saying their reunion albums haven't quite lived up to their classic 2000s records, but I've really enjoyed them. I think Luciferian Towers is a really strong release. It's concise, and it shows that the band are capable of really strong melodies. I think their sense of melodicism is something that's understated in their music. It's not quite as noisy or drony or as powerful as some of their previous releases, but I think they've substituted that really well with some really triumphant, soaring melodies. It sounds like Godspeed have recorded a victory march for the post-apocalyptic battle in Valhalla or something. I thought this was a great record. Certainly leagues better than that latest Mogwai album. Well, here we are, we're into the top 10 now, and I've got to give it to this new Pallbearer record, Heartless. This album is a little bit softer than their previous efforts. The production's a bit cleaner, a bit shinier, but they've still come through with some of their most majestic and emotive songs. Sometimes this band get described as cry doom, but it's true. This band have the quality to move you to tears with their epic, ironically heartfelt music and lyrics. So much passion coming from this band. This is a very progressive album as well. In particular, I think the final track, it's nearly 20 minutes long, A Plea for Understanding. I think that's one of the best songs they've ever written. Total Warning worship, but I'll take that. And at number 9, we have the debut album from Idols. This band are from Bristol, and I know there's a lot of bands jumping on the punk and post-punk bandwagon, but this band sound genuine. Like, they put some other new bands to shame. Like, this is how punk should be done in 2017. This is a ferocious record, full of witty puns and clever lyrics. The guitar's just so fierce. The performances on this album, full of vitality, so visceral. This thing just blew my head off. I could generally see people who were around for the 70s punk explosion really digging this album. It's a little bit more modern sounding. It tackles more current issues in the political climate, and it does it well. It's not in your face. It has a sense of humor, it has a sense of irony, and it really just punches you in the face. This is one of the most exciting bands. Really interested to see what they do next. Another album that got my blood pumping was the new Elder record. This thing is seriously epic. It's full of these colourful, progressive songs. For a band that used to do more slower, doomy stuff, this is actually really up-tempo. It's slightly fast-paced drums, but it's full of energy. It's got these amazing twiddly riffs. There's so many belting riffs in this thing, and I love the way this band take loads of sections in a song and they join them together so smoothly. Their songs are constantly changing up like they've got ADHD. Not quite on the level of like Dillinger Escape Plan, but these songs are just constantly building and changing into different things, and they join the dots together so well. One of the best guitar albums of the year. The guitar playing on this album is fantastic. I went and saw them live and I was just mesmerized by how tight this band are. And they've got skills. They've got skills to pay the bills. Every time I listen to this album, I just wanna headbang and shove my fist in the air. It's one of those albums. Urgh. Shout out to Converge. They're back, and this band just still can't do any wrong. They've been going over 20 years now, and every time they bring out an album, the rest of the post-hardcore, metalcore, whatever you want to call it, genre just becomes irrelevant. That's how good this band are. They're still delivering the goods. I feel like their music's getting more powerful, more dynamic. I think Kurt Ballou is just becoming stronger and stronger as a producer. He's producing tons of other great records and artists. Full of Hell, Chelsea Wolf, just off the top of my head. The whole band are just bringing their A game every time. I just don't know how a band that is going this long can still be at the top of their genre, full of innovation, bringing out another fantastic record. It's been a long wait. It's been like 5 years since their last album, which was also fantastic. This one's a bit heavier, a bit meaner, and full of emotive lyrics and songwriting as well. The performances are just out of this world. Like, this band, they never phone it in. They give you 100% every time. Shout out to the EP they released just before this album as well. Only 2 tracks, but I think the track Eve was one of the best tracks they've ever written, so that could just as easily have made it onto this list, but I think the album delivers an even bigger statement. And at number 6, we have the third record from Arca. This one's self-titled. And I think we're on to one of the most exciting electronic producers of the decade. Arca's worked with other artists like Björk, FK Twigs. When he started, he was a really interesting producer. He's making some really weird, out there sounds that sounded really unique to him. But with this third record, he's just improved his songwriting quality. So he was a great producer before this, but now he's not only a great producer, but a great songwriter too. He started singing on this album. He sings in Spanish, which is his native language, I believe. And I think working with Björk has really rubbed off on him because he's getting more personal with his music. This sort of pop star, this rock star sort of persona's coming out of him even more. And I think he's delivered his best record yet. It's full of fantastic sounds, really off-the-wall productions, eerie, haunting, very seedy, got that Twin Peaks quality to it. But the use of vocals and more hooks and dynamics in his music has just made him progress further. This is a really striking record. This thing really blew me away. Fleet Foxes are back with their third full-length album, and definitely their most ambitious one. They started making sort of catchy, accessible, poppy songs in the folk realm, but this record, it's a much bigger beast. It's progressive. The songs are like suites with multiple movements. The production is huge. The array of instruments has grown. And it has a very strong Simon and Garfunkel influence. Some of the most gorgeous and strongest vocal harmonies I've heard from folk music in modern times. Like, the performances on this album are full of emotion, full of passion, and yeah, they've come out with their biggest, boldest, most challenging work to date. This Rainbow Mirror album, it's 3.5 hours long over 4 discs or 7 pieces of vinyl. Very, very, very challenging statement from an artist who is constantly putting out new music. He puts out multiple releases every year. Dominic Furnal under the prurient name Vatican Shadow and other things. So he's an interesting guy to watch. Obviously, I've not heard all of his stuff, but I've heard a lot of his most notable label works. I think he's come through with his most passionate, his most personal, his most epic and ambitious release yet. Not only is this a very long album, but it's actually his most low-key album. Dominic Furnal's known as this really shocking noise artist. If you see clips of him performing live, it's definitely got a big shock value to it. It's deafening, it's violent, he's rolling on the floor screaming. But this album is much more subtle. It's full of these long, droney, drifting, minimal, instrumental electronic pieces that has a lot more in common with ambient and drone and dark ambient, reminding me a bit of Lustmord. What makes this album so striking is just it has such a strong sense of melancholy. There's actually some really striking melodies coming through on this thing, even though they're quite downplayed. They take a while to develop. There is plenty of noise to be found on this record, but it's used in more of an atmospheric way. It adds to the climaxes of the record, but it doesn't beat you over the head with noise, this album. A much more subtle release than we've heard from Prurient before. But yeah, even though this is a huge album and it came late in the year, released in December, I was just blown away by this record. It almost has this like doomy feel to it, but told through ambient music and electronic music rather than metal. If you have the patience to this album, I don't think you need to listen to it all in one go. Like, you could break it down into if you bought the CD, you could break this down disc by disc and just listen to it in pieces. Each disc almost feels like an album in its own right. They all have a similar end result. If you want to hear one of the strangest releases of the year and fancy a real challenge, then this is the one you need to hear. Okay, so I had a bit of a dilemma thinking about whether I should include the brand new album on this list after what's happened. In case you haven't heard, Brand New's frontman Jesse Lacey, he's been called out for indecent sexual harassment of a minor. Very serious topic this year. It seems like after the whole Me Too, Harvey Weinstein, more victims of sexual abuse are finding more courage to come out with their stories, and it's great to see that offenders are getting called out a lot more, even if they are celebrities or famous artists and musicians. So yeah, I mean, I've not listened to this album since the news broke out, but before that happened, I can't deny that I thought this is one of the greatest albums of the year. I listened to this album loads. I don't know if it'd be fair to spite the entire band just based on their frontman. There are other people in this band, not just Jesse Lacey. I feel like this work of art stands on its own, can separate it from their frontman. So with that in mind, I decided to include it in the end because I can't deny I adored this record. Brand New have decided this is going to be their final album, and what a way to go out. It's their most mature album. If you don't know, Brand New were one of the pioneering bands of the 2000s, alternative rock, emo, post-hardcore, veterans, one of the best of the genre. Their older stuff is a bit heavier, lots more screaming vocals, but they've always had some great folk influence, more melodic, downbeat tunes, and this being their last album, they're hitting their 40s now, and it makes sense for them to make a more down-key album. It's full of fantastic lyrics, amazing storytelling, the production is full of variety, full of atmosphere, there's amazing samples and of tape recordings and stuff implemented into the music, and I think they've come out with some of their best set of songs. Yes, this is a down-tempo album. Some people will miss the more fiery performances, but if you're a folk music fan, I sort of came at this from that sort of direction. I think this has got some amazing folky qualities. The band have always been just amazing songwriters, and the songwriting really comes through here. From start to finish, this is a fascinating album, full of emotion, full of joy, sorrow, a whole range of emotions displayed on here. I think it's their best work they've ever done. That bit of a controversial statement, but because they have some fine albums in their discography if you've not heard them already. But yeah, I think this is their grand opus. They've really gone out with such a moving record, and it is a shame about what's happened. I hope it doesn't taint such a fantastic album, but I also just don't feel like I could have taken this out of the list because this has been one of my favourite listening experiences of the year. Just missing the top spot is the debut album from Under called Slick. Now, I've listened to this thing probably 100 times this year. The album's only 37 minutes long, but it's so catchy. As soon as it finishes, I just want to hear it again and again and again. It rarely left my car stereo this whole year. If you don't know this band, Under from Manchester, England, they play sort of doom metal, sludge rock, influenced by artists like the Melvins, Jesus Lizard. It's definitely got that creepy kind of alternative vibe to it. But damn, this band full of colour, full of weirdness, trippiness. This is a really strange record. They have this sort of jazzy approach to their songwriting. They have these really off-kilter, off-tempo grooves that are constantly changing up, taking you by surprise. And I think they've come through with one of the best rock and metal albums of the year. Not only is this album catchy, full of really zany, out-of-the-box lyrics, extremely dark and sinister, yet with this sadistic sweetness to it as well. It keeps reeling you in for more. They know the perfect balance between eeriness, wackiness, and direct catchiness as well. Plenty of these songs will get stuck in your head, full of amazing riffs, really detailed and off-the-wall production choices. They'll throw in random samples, weird panning, all these sorts of things. They'll be discordant one moment and really sweet and melodic the next. An album that's full of surprises, full of left turns and detours. It's their first album. I think Under are one of the most striking bands. People just need to hear more and more and more, especially see them live. Their live show is just chills down your spine, amazing. And throughout 2017, I've been absolutely addicted to this album. I just keep coming back for more and more and more. I've got to put it on right now. This is so good. And the number one album of the year. This is a band that have absolutely blown me away. They've just come out of nowhere and just taken the whole world by storm. It is, of course, hip-hop boy band outfit Brockhampton. If you haven't heard of this band, Brockhampton consists of about 15 band members. No, not all of them partake in the music, but they include all their artists, their visual directors as a part of the band as well, which I think is a really forward-thinking idea. All 15 of them, they moved into a house together in California. They relentlessly put out their own music, their own videos, artwork, controlling every aspect of their music independently, no label, no distributor, doing everything themselves. This band have been so productive that they've put out 3 albums this year. Now, I know what you're thinking, how can you count 3 albums in one spot? Well, A, they've all come out together as a CD box set. That's the first physical release of the album. And B, fuck you, I can do what I want, it's my list. Yeah, these 3 albums, they only came out a couple of months apart, but I sort of tend to listen to them all in one go as if they are just one triple album, which is how I think they should be treated. And Hampton, especially viewing them as a hip-hop act, they're just a huge breath of fresh air. This is not only my favourite album of the year, but this is a contender for one of the most exciting bands of the decade. Kind of reminds me of Wu-Tang Clan or Odd Future, but with Odd Future, I felt like they were better individually, whilst Hampton really works strongly as a band. Every vocalist here has such a strong personality, you can tell them all apart. They bring their own style, their own lyricism, and most importantly, this band, they're multicultural, multi-ethnicity, multi-sexual. They have some members that are gay, and one of their biggest song topics is how more people in hip-hop should be comfortable with coming out their sexuality. This band are very conscious, they're addressing really current topics in their music, but they also have a lot of fun as well. Hampton consider their 2 biggest influences One Direction and Tupac, and it kind of fit in because when it comes to hip-hop, they can bring it really hard. Like, sometimes they go as hard and dark as like Wu-Tang or Mobb Deep, but they have this really sweet side. They implement these tremendously catchy hooks, and they do it so well. Sometimes when hip-hop acts try to put hooks in their music, it can come across as corny or sour, but this band do it with so much passion. It's because each vocalist is so wild on the mic, and the productions are so booming and sharp that it just adds so much color and bounciness to their music. But across these 3 albums, there's a lot of variety. Some of the tracks leave the hip-hop realm entirely. They've got like summery guitar ballads, R&B sort of vocal cuts as well, but everything is done with so much attention to detail. It got to the point where every time this band dropped a new music video or dropped a new song throughout the year, I was rushing home to put on YouTube and check it out. The way they present their music is just so exciting. It's something really fresh. This is true independent music, and they're using the power of the internet to really bang their message across. Genuinely one of the most exciting and productive bands of the decade. I haven't been this excited about a hip-hop act in a long time. I was excited when Odd Future came out, but then the momentum sort of dropped. But their solo albums were much better, I have to give them that. Especially Old Sweatshirt. Yeah, right now I'm just excited. It's interesting to think where this band might go next. Will they sign to a big label? Will they start working with other producers? Will they have guests on their albums? Will we see like Kendrick Lamar features cropping up? Or will they keep things independent because they're already making the most exciting hip-hop of the year? You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They've already announced a new album for 2018 as well, so the production rate of this band is absolutely phenomenal, but they're just releasing banger after banger after banger, and with so much variety as well, I'm not getting bored anytime soon. So if you've not heard this band, get on the hype train. Can't say enough good things about this band. Hampton, I've just turned 2017 upside down for me, like a complete phenomenon, just the most exciting acts I can think of right now. So yeah, Hampton get my #1 spot with their 3 Saturation albums, and that wraps up a fantastic 2017. I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble on about my favourite records. Please let me know what you thought of my list. What were your favourite records? Please like, subscribe and share, and hopefully I'll do some more audio and video content in the future. Here's to 2018. Hopefully we'll have another great year of music ahead.